Welcome everybody to our Career Awareness and Exploration Professional Learning Series this year. If you've been with us before, you know that we're doing this once a month to try to offer some topics of interest to folks who are connecting around career awareness and exploration in Kalamazoo County and beyond. So super glad you're here. Jocelyn is putting in the chat the link for you to sign in to get sketches today. So make sure that you don't miss the chance to fill out that super brief form. I think she also is going to put in the chat a link to the PDF of today's slide deck if you want to follow along and or have access to it later. There are some live links in it that you might want to go back and check into. So with that being said, we are super glad that you all are here, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Maybe if there we go. We're going to start with a little check-in, wondering how everybody's doing on the Tuesday before the snowstorm, before the holiday. And so maybe this idea of snowmen was a better idea before snow was starting to seem like a thing that could get under our skin today. But what we're doing is inviting you to pick which of these snow people represents how you are feeling today, and pop the number of that snow person into the chat so we can kind of check in and see how everybody's doing. Christy, I love that. Up the upside down snowman. Excellent. I'm letting one more person in, Jocelyn. So if you wanted to pop that sketchy thing in the chat again. Lots of ones. I love that. It looks like let it snow, bring it on. Jason is a 7. He's at the beach with his snow person. Excellent. Who else do I see? Oh, 5 with the sunset. Kelly, that's nice too. I like the sunset snowman. Excellent. So again, we are so grateful that you all are here. Ethan is a 5. He's also with the snow. Excellent. No one picked a 4, huh? Good, because we were kind of wondering about how creepy that was. Maybe wondering what we would be setting ourselves up for if people were feeling like that. So we are so glad you're here, and so glad that you are appreciating the beach and the sunset and the snow on this Tuesday before the holiday break. So I wanted to just quickly give you a sense of what's going to happen over the course of the next hour and a half. We're very excited about this topic and how it connects to career awareness and exploration. And we're going to give you a lot of information and a lot of links to things that you will be able to use in your work with young people, including access to a couple of toolkits that will provide some strategies and some resources. Then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the applications of youth voice and choice from our team's work. And what we're really hoping is by the time we get to 5 o'clock or so, you're going to be so excited about all of these ideas that you're going to want to jump in and tell us what you think about how you're using youth voice and choice in your work already and how you might be inspired by today's presentation. And then we will wrap up at 5:30. It is with deep gratitude that I share this slide to let you know who has been involved in the preparation for today's session. I so appreciate my colleague Jocelyn Wright-Newman as my partner on the CAE team today, and equally grateful to Cara and Ethan, who really are the folks who inspired me to learn about youth voice and choice and to understand the importance of integrating it into our work. So I come before you humbly as not the expert, but grateful to have colleagues who as we've talked about, we're all going to learn about this together, but we've got some folks in the room who've gone down the path a little farther. So that's who's with us today in terms of presenters. And I will pass the baton to Jocelyn.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you today. Excited to learn along with you about this topic. And we're going to start by doing a little bit of self-reflection about our own experiences. I guess one of the interesting things about this topic is we've all been a young person, so we can all enter into this from the perspective of our professional lenses, but also from the lens of having lived a young person's life at one point. And if you're like me, there are days when it feels like 5 minutes ago, and there are days where it feels like 150 years ago. So it depends on the day. But we're going to think through some different dimensions of this, and we're going to ask you to respond in the chat. with a response somewhere on the agree to disagree scale. So an A will tell us that you agree, a double A will tell us that you strongly agree, a D will tell us that you disagree, and two Ds that you strongly disagree with each of the following statements. So you can go ahead and just enter your response after each question in the chat, and we'll sort of see where everyone is at. All right. As a student, I was asked for feedback about how things were done in my classes and or in my school. What was your experience with that?
Wow.
Looks like lots of disagreement or strong disagreement. Thank you, everyone, for your input. As a student, most activities I participated in were adult-directed. Sensing some strong themes here. All right. Mostly agreement to strong agreement. As a student, I felt I had a meaningful voice in the way my classes and or my school were run. Strongly agree to strongly disagree. Some humor with that one. As a student, I was responsible for planning an event, such as a dance or a fundraiser. All right, some ranges there, mostly agreement. As a student, I often felt like my ideas were ignored just because I was young. All right, a range on that one as well. As a student, I engaged in training around being a student leader. All right, some varying answers on that one in terms of training in leadership. As a student, there were times I felt manipulated or tokenized in my school. A lot of disagreement on that last statement. All right, and so this is where we were hoping that you will freely unmute yourself and share your thoughts with us as a small group. We'd love to get some interaction here. A couple of questions for you to consider. What did you notice about your responses? First off, does anyone want to unmute and share with us a little bit about what you noticed about your responses to some of those questions?
I'll share.
Awesome. Thanks, Cara.
It's interesting how there were themes across many of those. And I think the resource that I've seen this in, folks usually agreed with the last one in feeling tokenized, and most of us disagreed. But I was also curious as we responded and had a lot of similarities, if being in the education field, maybe we took advantage of some of the opportunities or were invested in different ways than perhaps other students may have been.
Interesting. Almost like this is a self-selected group of folks who maybe felt engaged in a different way in school. Interesting thought. All right, and maybe this question will get us get more of a sharing. What got in the way or supported your voice when you were a student? So for you, what were some of those intervening factors that maybe led to some of the answers that you had on those questions?
I was not one to share my voice unless I was 100% sure. I was not that I was a perfectionist, but I did not want to look like I was wrong. And so I wouldn't have shared unless spoken to. So I'm more outspoken these days, but but then not so much.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective. And actually, I very much relate to that as well.
I was thinking about my relationship with teachers. So I had really positive relationships for the most part. And so it was really drastic when I didn't have a positive relationship. And so I didn't feel as free to like contribute and be part of the class. And so that was also overshadowing a lot of my responses. I was like, well, I felt valued and I felt like, part of the community and I could talk to a teacher. But when you think about the system of schools, that felt different,
So very relationship dependent and very much supported or not supported by the work that teacher had done to build that relationship and the work that you had done as well.
I think it's really easy for this particular element to fall along introvert extrovert lines, right? Like, so the folks who are extroverted and who naturally say, ooh, I've got a thought in my head that I want to share with everyone, right? Like there's some folks who process in that way. They easily get a microphone and they get to share their ideas and opinions. And those who may be more hesitant or just process in a different way don't often get their ideas solicited by educators in general. So at least that was my experience.
Yeah.
Ethan,
Absolutely.
one thing I noticed too was, and I kind of had like two paths as a high schooler where I was on the right track and then I went off the rails for a couple of years. And so behavior really dictated how much voice you had. Like if you're doing the right thing, when I was in student government, there was more interaction and more voice. But as I got a little crazy, it's like, hey, be careful giving him the mic.
So access and opportunity plays into it as well. Thanks, Jason.
I see in the chat that Erin's saying that she doesn't remember getting asked, right? Getting surveys or check-ins about classes or programs. So being able to give input or feedback wasn't really an option if nobody was asking.
Great point, Erin. Did anyone else have a reaction to this remembering or this kind of trip down memory lane that they want to share with the group?
I would share one more piece that I was thinking about as a student. I don't know that I felt like I didn't feel negative that my voice wasn't being asked for, but I don't know that I felt like my voice mattered, right? Like I wasn't necessarily feeling dismissed, but I also didn't feel like I should be contributing as a student in a space.
Yeah. Can relate to that piece too, that it was allowed, but maybe not encouraged or utilized to the fullest extent. Great. Well, thank you everyone for participating and kind of getting us started with thinking about our own experiences.
One more thing, I was just thinking about just the style of teaching, in general, and comparatively to today, the whole drive was different. I don't even know if it was they didn't do it that way. I just don't know that that was the approach at all during my experience. So I think, and I grew up in Mendon and it was a small school and we all knew each other. So, we could talk and those sorts of things. I wasn't in a giant school where your voice can get lost, but I don't know, the teaching style was just different in general. And it was more sit and drill and separate desks. And so there wasn't that opportunity for collaboration and talk to a neighbor. And I guess there was some, like somebody said, it was so long ago. I don't know, you're pulling it out of the cobwebs, but I don't know. I guess I don't feel slighted by not having those things because my experience was just different than how it's being taught today.
Well, Jennifer, that was a softball lob to
Yes.
the next slide.
Good transition.
You're
And
welcome.
actually, before we leave the assessment process, I'm going to drop one link in the chat, which is just another version of a self-assessment that you could use. And if you want to use that link, just go ahead and make a copy, but it goes a little bit more in depth in terms of assessing voice and choice. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ethan.
Thank you. So yeah, Jennifer, thank you so much for the intro to this. And I would wholeheartedly agree with what you said in that traditionally, in the traditional approach to education, we really don't ask for students for their input, right? If you think about the way that the education system and process has historically been run, adults and educators have the power and students have minimal power, shall we say, right? The student's job is to learn the material, listen to the teacher, follow directions, and be good kids, right? Where teachers, their job is to move through the curriculum, manage the students, give directions, and then punish those who are not doing the right thing, right? And I'm definitely not saying this is how every classroom in the country has been run historically, but just the model of adults hold the knowledge and the power, and kids, your job is to sit and listen and absorb the power, right? That's kind of the way that we did things. So we're really having to rethink a lot of our traditional approaches to education because the culture is different, our students are different, and we are learning to adapt to those things. So I think that's a helpful frame for us to keep in mind, and it's been helpful for me to wrap my head around this work. So just to offer that up.
Well, and in contrast, as Ethan just said, from the power imbalance of the old way of doing education, one of the things that's most exciting to me about considering youth voice and choice is that ability to rebalance, right? And to really value and prioritize values, beliefs, perspectives, participation, and actual influence of young people in all aspects of schooling. So this definition comes from the Chicago Public Schools, where they talk about student voice being core to classroom, school, district, and community. And today, just so you know, we'll use youth voice and choice and student voice interchangeably. So why incorporate youth voice and choice? There are a lot of reasons based on research to think about this as an important element of how we do career awareness and exploration in particular. You can see some of those here in general. Young people's agency, sense of belonging, competency, problem solving, and facilitation, public speaking, interpersonal skills. All of those things are obviously increased when young people have the chance to really be partners in their career development education. Specifically, a school's responsiveness to student voice is associated with higher GPAs, higher attendance rates, and fewer chronically absent students. This is again from the Chicago Public Schools. And additionally, reform efforts, policy and reform efforts focusing on student voice are particularly salient during a period in which there's increased recognition of the demand for educational institutions to respond to the needs of youth from marginalized backgrounds. So another piece of youth voice and choice, it was interesting when there were so many Ds around feeling marginalized or tokenized. And I think that maybe if our audience included folks who came from some different backgrounds, we might have had different answers to that question. So I mentioned that there are different levels of value for including student voice in our work. For students themselves, as you can see here, their improved learning outcomes, that GPA and attendance has been documented, that deeper sense of value and belonging. We know from our social emotional learning core concepts that belonging is really important in school situations, so that students feel as if their voice is included and important. I put this quote at the bottom, nothing about them without them. I hear that refrain really often from our colleague Meg at KidNet. And so nothing about us without us is what youth would say to us. At the teacher level, some of the benefits of elevating student voice and choice is that there's a greater sense of efficacy and self-confidence, both for teachers and for students, and more confidence of teachers to be able to mentor and to coach their students. So teachers can be responsive to students by adapting their curricula and instruction in response to student feedback. And at the school level, a more positive school culture can often come from engaging with students as our partners in this work. Classrooms become mutually supportive for teachers and students. And students in decision-making changes the way the school feels to them. They feel that they're able to be part of a culture that includes them as it may include the way that school is run. So why then, if there are all these clear benefits to integrating youth voice and choice in our work, are we not just naturally doing it? And in addition to Ethan's slide about the old way of education, I think we also have to address the fact that often there is some ageism, some adultism that's holding us back from really viewing youth as our partners in this work. So what is adultism? It's bias against youth. It's thinking that adults are better than youth. They have better ideas. They have better ways of doing things, that they're inherently superior. And as if we as adults can become mindful of that bias that we have towards adults, it will be the first step in our process of recognizing that we can in fact be successful partners with the youth in our programs or in our classrooms. So that's one of the things that we're going to have to take the blinders off and pay attention to as we start down this path. When is it that I, as an adult, am predisposed to thinking that my ideas and my way of doing things is better just because I'm an adult?
Thanks, Joan. And as you were naming that, I was just thinking about some interactions with my own kids at home, and I'm humbled every day to learn all the things I don't know, that they actually know better than I, and all the things I can learn from them. So the next few slides we're going to share are a couple different related frameworks to help you, again, think about both can be used as an assessment of where you're at in your engagement with students, as well as sort of a visionary tool for as you're thinking about particular curriculum or particular engagement in the classroom or in the school or in a broader setting. What are the opportunities for engagement? So what you see in front of you is called Hart's Ladder, the name of the developer. It's named after the developer. So this framework, again, helps us think about kind of 8 levels of student engagement. So those first 3 levels are kind of a non-participatory level of engagement. So students are asked for their perspective, they may be surveyed or polled, but those ideas and opinions are generally ignored at this level. So the priorities, the causes, the actions are all still determined by adults, whether or not students are involved in any piece of that puzzle. So on the right side of this ladder is kind of the general description, and then on the left side you'll see some deeper examples of how that's lived out. Levels 4 through 6 are really focused on it's sort of an advisory level where students can evaluate the data with adults, they can review the outcomes together. There's some collaboration in terms of identifying needs and solutions. But ultimately, then the adults take it from there and implement whatever the next action steps are. So this is where you kind of get into some of those surveys where students may give feedback on a curriculum, on a lesson, on content. That students then are informed once input has been received about what's going to happen next, what those next steps are. And then we look at levels 7 and 8, those top 2 levels are really focused on building leadership and giving students this opportunity to really lead the evaluation, lead the research, and really be a part of that leadership in terms of, again, identifying what those next steps are. One thing that I think is really, I don't know, maybe it was a new aha for me, or was as a helpful framework for me, was thinking about these levels 7 and 8 in particular really align with so many of the frameworks that we're trying to integrate when we think about our classrooms and schools, right? So social emotional learning is integrated here in helping students have their own self-awareness, build social awareness, engage in that problem solving. I'm involved in a lot of trauma-informed classrooms and schools work right now, and I think about trauma-informed, resiliency-informed practices are all about relationships, which 7 and 8 are focused around, related to creating a sense of mastery and self-efficacy, like what my presence matters in this space, and I can influence what's happening in this space. Thinking about restorative practices, we're talking a lot about in our community, that 7 and 8, again, are focused on community building as well as fair process. So fair process is all about we get everyone's voices, we work together to make those decisions, we implement together, and then when things change, we're really clear about why those changes are happening. And then the other framework I was thinking about were culturally responsive practices, that these top 2 tiers are really helping us think about who are the individuals involved in these decisions, how do we really elicit what's important to them, because when we are engaged in what's important to the individuals in front of us, we know they're going to have higher investment, they're going to have greater learning, they're going to feel competent in that engagement and that action. So as we think about youth voice and this Hearts Ladder and kind of looking towards those top tiers, it really helps bring together or even augments other initiatives that we might be engaged in. This next slide is just it's a similar version of what we just saw with Hearts Ladder. This is taken from Chicago Public Schools Student Voice Toolkit. And it's just another version to give you a framework of what it looks like. Again, the Hearts Ladder on the far left column. The middle column is what could this look like? What do these different levels look like when we are thinking about evaluating what's happening in the classroom or in a school? And then the far right column are some examples of what that looks like when you're thinking about this, particularly in school or in classroom decision making. So this is Ethan in just a minute is going to go into our toolkit, and this image is on there, but I wanted to give you that framework as well. The last slide that we have is, again, one more framework that kind of builds on that Hearts Ladder, looking at those upper levels, so corresponding to levels 4 through 8 on Hearts Ladder. Again, helps you kind of assess where you're at. So this framework provides a vision for what could be, as well as a way of assessing and being concrete about where you currently find yourself. So to the left here, this is where students are articulating their perspectives, their sources of data. And as you move to the right of this continuum, the students are really directing those interactions and the decisions, and they're leaders in the midst of that, excuse me, that decision-making and change-making process. I'm gonna let Ethan take it over to help you find these on the Youth Voice Toolkit and show you a little bit more about the resources in that space.
Thank you, Cara. That's really helpful to kind of give us some background about some of the content in this website. So hopefully, yep, you have the website linked in the chat. So what I'm going to do is kind of walk with you through the structure of the site and talk about how you might use it. So for those of you who have a tab open with this, great, you're welcome to follow along. And if you don't, you can just kind of watch on screen and we'll kind of walk you through this. So starting with just the homepage, right? This gives a sense of what is student voice, how are we defining that, and how to use this site, right? So most of us, when we get on a site, we want to see, all right, so what are we talking about? And how do I make this a practical tool in my classroom? So If you scroll down, it gives us a little sense of how to use the site, and kind of talks about practical ways that we might do that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to direct you to the quick start guide. So if you click on that link that says quick start guide, I'm wondering who's driving the screen today.
It's me. So do I need to stop sharing for you to be able to share your screen, or can you just grab it?
Yeah, I can't grab it, but or you can keep sharing as long as you kind of follow along. And would you click on the quick start guide?
Oh, well,
Just a screenshot. That's just a screen.
right. So that this is I think I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm gonna try to.
This is going to be exciting, friends. Yeah.
How's that?
Perfect. Perfect. Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going for. All right, perfect. So yeah, if you go to the quick start guide, that would be fantastic. Yeah, so just to give you a little bit of background. So Cara told you that we really want this to be a practical tool. We want you to examine what you're doing, but an easy way to do this would be this kind of flow chart in the quick start guide, right? So when you ask questions like, has my school cultivated a culture that values student perspectives, right? Are we interested and committed to engaging student perspectives in classroom? So that should be something that either you as an individual or as a leader are able to ask and answer, or you lift that up to your administration or your school improvement committee or your grade level team. And then if the answer is no, then you're going to say, all right, so how can we get some professional development? How can we get some learning around ways to engage youth voice, right? And the answer is yes. If the answer is yes, then you jump in and you say, all right, let's look at establishing a leadership structure for students, and let's find ways to enhance what we're already doing, right? To maybe systematize the things and the practices that we're already doing. So this should give you just a quick sense of how to jump into this content. I'm not going to go into every page of this site. There's a page about what students want adults to know. That should give you a sense that we really took time. Cara, our colleague Abby, and a previous colleague Jen all took our time to really make sure that we asked for a lot of student input when we created this site. So we tried to put some of the learning from that process into this page. So if you're wanting to hear what students around not only this county, but Berrien County wanted us to know, then these bullet points here kind of highlight some of those things. So now I just want to jump into strategies and tools. So if you're thinking about, all right, I just want to know what to do. How do I start to put this into practice? How do I use this? This is the section you'll jump into. We also wanted to be really sure about talking about the levels of student involvement. So if you scroll down on this page, the next step page, you'll see a link to some other resources, but also this table here, which kind of evaluates each of the strategies that we have listed on the left-hand side. So anywhere from the Think, Pair, Share to the Youth Advisory Councils. So some of the strategies are pretty straightforward and simple. Like a Think, Pair, Share just involves us saying, all right, so when you think about a career in the arts, right? Tell your neighbor the first idea that comes to mind? What's the first career? So you're just saying, here's a question, talk to the person next to you, think, pair, share, right? It's a good way to get student voice. It's a good way to engage students, but it's relatively simple and basic. And that's a think, pair, share. That's why it's rated in the expression column. If you go deeper down into the list, like decision-making teams, design thinking, youth advisory council, those strategies really elicit more student activism and leadership, where you're having a deeper level of engagements with students, and you're really inviting them to be a part of decision-making, leadership, the bodies or groups in your school that bring about change in the school. So I'm going to walk you through a couple strategies. The first one that we're going to dive into just quickly is snapshot photo voice. So if you're looking for kind of a creative, or in this case, it looks to be snapshot photo VICE, right? VOICE, which is another name for it, really. It's an icy, amazing strategy. It's a little technical thing. So snapshot photo voice is a really creative way to elicit students' input. So if you look at this, you can see, all right, so we've got a topic and we are going to do this project that really involves like visual thinking. So you capture students' ideas in photographs or images. This can be done digitally or it can be done physically. So say you're thinking about 3 careers and you have students get into they can do this individually or they can get into groups, and then you have, you know, a stack of 50, 100 printed images or magazines that have photos that are related to your content. You have students answer questions or share their ideas and their understandings of a career through those images. So they're able to kind of like really get involved and capture their ideas through images. And I think this is a really fun one. This is one that I wish that I would have done as a kid, or I would have invited students to do more often, because I think in certain stages, kids think much more in pictures than they do in sentences or words. So this is a really fun one. So if you say, all right, so maybe I want some deeper involvement. So you scroll down in that list of strategies and tools, and you think, all right, maybe we want a town hall meeting. So that sounds fun and interesting. So you click on town hall meeting, and then you think, all right, so we talked about this topic. We did a photo voice on it. Now we really want students' input, and we're going to hold a town hall, right? So you might have a topic at hand, and then you have either a panel of experts, or you have a policy panel, or a group of adults who can help to guide and facilitate discussion on the topic, inviting students to kind of come to the microphone and share their opinion, their ideas, and the ways that they want to see change around this. So those are just 2 examples of strategies that you'll find in this toolkit, but we really don't have time to get into all of them, but I would invite you to just sort of surf through and click on different ideas and different tools and strategies, whether it's decision-making teams and you really want to like take a deep dive, or just an artifact box and you want students to dive into like artifacts around a topic. Whatever you think sounds interesting, these are designed to be very practical and teacher-friendly tools. That was a lot. What comments or questions do you have around the site? in terms of how to use it, what's in there, and kind of practical tools, ideas, strategies, things.
Can I just highlight also, while folks are percolating on any potential questions or thoughts, I think it's under essential practice, is maybe, I don't know if theory is quite the right word, but a couple pieces that we were hearing over and over again from students, as well as we were kind of diving into student voice work. It includes fair process, equity, and adultism, kind of things these are sort of foundational knowledge base pieces, so that whatever the strategy is you're thinking about integrating, or kind of the broad picture of what you're looking to integrate, these kind of help us stay grounded in the purpose and intent of student voice, and how to kind of give us the guardrails, so we don't go about doing a thing without doing it in a way that actually lifts up our students' voices. So I just want to highlight that information is there both for you, but also as you share this information out with others.
Yeah, thanks, Cara. I think that is important. It's good to have strategies, but it's also important to keep in mind, all right, so what are the underpinnings of this work that are important for not only me, but my colleagues, my administrators, what's important to keep in mind. I think so much of this work is grounded in equity that it's important to really do some of that thinking and reading and discussing before you just say, oh, I've got a strategy, let's do the thing. So I can really read that people are excited with this, and they are just overwhelmed with knowledge and inspiration. So this is good. This is good. Just dive in.
I am super excited. I just messaged our whole MySTEM network and told them all, you got to dig into this. And so don't read my face as anything but pure excitement, because I'm excited for this.
Oh, I'm reading that. I totally got your excitement. It's great. It's great. It's also like 5 o'clock on a Tuesday before the holidays. So we don't expect folks to be like jumping up and down and being on fire about this. You guys are doing a great job of following along and cooperating with the learning. So thanks, Diane. Thanks for your 2 cents. That was like 22 cents for sure. That's it, Rebecca. That's what I'm seeing. Yeah, I think that's an illustration how everyone's feeling. The Rebecca Joyce happy dance. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
Ethan, you mentioned something right at the very beginning, talking about it as a process or a system. I do think that this would need to be something that you bring to, it's not something that you could do in isolation. I mean, you can, but to me, I think that would be kind of confusing to a kid. So they get, the language in your classroom, they get the idea in your classroom, they get lots of voice in your classroom, and then they go to another teacher that doesn't have the background. And that's confusing. Do I talk? Do I not talk? Am I supposed to speak now? Do I get a microphone? Do I not get a microphone? So I think without a system in place, without having at least a staff meeting that says, hey, this is a thing. And yeah, I think it would be confusing for the kids personally. So I do think that having a system in place, but it would be something that you'd need to, front load.
Yeah, I could not have said that better, Jennifer. I think that's a great way to think about it, especially from a student perspective, right? If one classroom is all about allowing for student voice and decision making and engagement, active engagement, and then they go to the next room or the next class, and it's the traditional old ways, that is confusing, right? Because you're really experiencing 2 different cultures in a sense. So thank you for that. I could not have said it better. Amen to that.
Well, and again, Jennifer, I think you really are intuiting what's coming next with everything that you say today. So in addition to the amazing student voice toolkit that's been created by our KRESA colleagues, we wanted to share another toolkit that's actually specifically designed around working with young people to design pathways. So this is where we get to from the toolkit that's been created for educators to use in the classroom in general, to the toolkit that's created out of the experience of working with young people on their career pathways. And in the interest of time, we're not going to go to this website. So I invite you to either grab the QR code, or maybe Jocelyn can pop that link into the chat. But I just wanted to bring this to your attention as you all who are here, because our focus is on career awareness and exploration, as another option for finding some supports and resources as you think about this really important idea, especially as we think about careers and futures of hearing and listening to and leveraging the voices of our young people. So this site was created actually in conjunction with about 4,000 youth from across the education field, and has this really cool meta concept that is at the basis of it. What if young people's experiences and perspectives are critical and missing from all of our efforts to improve career pathways for young people? And what if we've been, as adults, designing interventions to support our students' career evolution, but we haven't necessarily been taking advantage of the opportunity to listen to the ideas, experiences, and perspectives of the young people who we're seeking to serve, and especially when those voices belong to Black and Hispanic students, as well as young people who come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. So this whole program was designed around that idea. Let's see what would happen if we applied youth voice and choice to career pathway exploration. And the result was coming up with these 4 design principles that really are the center of how they are recommending that we all do career awareness and exploration. So centering young people, obviously, having young people as co-designers of policies and programs rather than just participants. And I love this, adults serving as guides rather than gatekeepers. Again, as Ethan said so eloquently, the idea that equity is really central to this work at an individual and a systems and a community level. So as we're thinking about programs and policies, it's really important for us to be mindful of barriers and to be open to the possibility that we may need to support youth in dismantling or overcoming some systems challenges as we do the work. I love that they included as one of the guiding principles, fostering connections and building networks. We know that none of us pursue a career path alone. And so the youth in this survey really lifted up the reality that creating access and cultivating relationships with folks in fields they're interested in is super important. And then illuminating meaningful exploration of career pathways. And we'll talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. The other thing, just super quickly, that came out of this other toolkits exploration was some core concepts that came from the young people that they connected with to create the toolkit. And these seemed important to me because they may challenge these youth perspectives may challenge some of the ways that we adults have been thinking about how we do career awareness and exploration. So what you can see here is 5 ideas about how ways that young people see themselves, and 2 language related things. And again, there is so much more information in this toolkit that can deepen your understanding of these voices from youth. But the sense that young people really do understand that I can change my life. And then the sense that where sometimes we operate from a deficit mentality, the young people who were surveyed for this toolkit really do believe that their identities will help them succeed. They believe that being a young Black woman or being a Latinx trans person is giving them characteristics and grit that really is going to help them succeed in the path that they are choosing. This third one, in lieu of saying, I want to have a good job, young people today are saying, I want to have a good life. And a good job is a piece of that. And I think that's a distinction that is useful for me as an adult to hear. The idea that youth who are exploring careers know that they might need support, but they're not really sure how to get it. That might resonate with some of the folks on the call who are involved in programs connecting with youth today. And then the sense that sometimes we think about pathways as something that young people will embark on, but there was a very clear sense in this work that youth already recognize that they already are on a path. They already are taking steps, and they already are making decisions and getting experiences that are building toward their future. So that was helpful, I thought, to hear too. Super quickly, I would invite you to go into this framework to look at what young people are saying about language and how we talk about jobs and work and careers. May be different. When we say those words, they may be heard in ways that we're not intending. And the importance of intentional relationships, we may use words like networks and connections, and it would behoove us to understand, again, what is heard when we use those words when we're working with young people. So again, go check out this Equitable Futures set of toolkits. There are voices there from students about career exploration, and we could spend the whole rest of our time on that. But what we really want to do now is segue into some examples and some thoughts from our career awareness and exploration team about how youth voice and choice is integrated and connected in the work that we're doing. And then we want to hear from you. So what became really clear to me as we started thinking about this presentation, which is a tiny subset and then application of a much larger and more in-depth presentation that we're going to give you access to at the end of this on youth voice and choice, we started to realize that specifically when we're talking about young people and their future planning, this idea of self-awareness is so integrally connected to youth voice and choice. And self-awareness is one of the key pieces of the work that we do in the CAE, trying to give students opportunities to answer the question for themselves. Who will I be? What do I care about? What am I interested in? And that self-awareness as a foundation for then students to find their voice and use that voice based on their understanding of themselves seemed to be a pretty key component of how we approach our work, but also a way to really lend, to integrate this into work that you may be doing to develop student self-awareness, realizing that then it may become increasingly important to hear their voices and make sure there are choices in what they do with what they learn about themselves. I just wanted to pop up the CAE and work-based learning continuum so that you would see, again, that self-awareness is one of the prime components of the work that we do in the CAE. And as we think about some of the experiences and curriculum that we're offering to students, recognizing that there are ample opportunities from K-12 to look at the ways that young people are participants or partners or leaders in that work. Also wanted to put up just for a second something that we're working on in the CAE as we start thinking about how to organize the developmental process of career awareness and exploration around themes of self-awareness and option awareness around these questions. Again, who am I? Who do I want to become? How do I like to learn? Our goal really is to start getting these questions out there to educators across the county so that we're starting to ask some of those same questions, and then we're starting to listen to those youth voices as they start to answer and tell us their thoughts on what their goals are for their future, what their purpose is. What does success look like for me? So this is an early document in our work, but I wanted to share it just to sort of set the stage for some of the specific things we are doing in our team. And I'll turn it over to Jocelyn.
All right, thanks, Joan. So one of the first examples we wanted to highlight was the work we are doing with Zello. And Zello, if you're not familiar with it, is an online career exploration program in pretty heavy use across the state of Michigan and in other states around us. Kalamazoo County, we provide it for all K-12 students through KRESA. And I know for some of you joining us from neighboring counties, many of you are using it as well. And if you're not, you may be using a tool very similar to this. But from a very early age, students can start using it in kindergarten, kind of on a elementary-based, game-based platform. But then starting in really third grade, but especially from 6th to 12th grade, students are building a portfolio about themselves, about their interests, their skills, their values, their experiences, things they want to explore further. They're taking assessments, and all of that information is put together for them in a portfolio that they have access to at any time, that their families can have access to in terms of having career-focused discussions with them. And it also becomes kind of a treasure trove of data about our students that educators can access. And so we just presented with counselors in our county on Friday about how some of this data could be used for things like working with students to integrate interests, career interests, hobby interests into what's happening in the classroom, into conversations happening in a school counselor office, into programming happening in the school based on what students are actively currently engaging in and are showing interest in. So being able to pull this data and use it kind of in real time gives us a little bit more active access, especially I came from the school counselor world where I wasn't necessarily in the classroom every single day with students. Access to a program like this gave me a chance to have another way of eliciting some of those interests, some of those talents, and be able to engage with students on a deeper level, knowing a little bit more about them. That portfolio on the right is kind of what we hope a student at the end of their time in Kalamazoo County will leave our schools with in terms of a portfolio they've curated about themselves, and trying to kind of, again, within the framework of a computer program, give them as much ownership over what this portfolio looks like and what experiences they're kind of lifting up from their educational, extracurricular, and home lives related to career development. So there's an experiences timeline where they're saving activities and then can link them to a resume. That storyboard at the bottom is a place for them to link to anything that really shows who they feel like they are in a way that they might want to use in terms of their career exploration. So it can be videos, it can be websites, and just again allows them to really try to tailor how they present themselves in a career lens, using the clips and the pictures and the music that for them is meaningful. Okay, Joan. And then the second piece of Zello that we just wanted to mention related to giving our students voice and choice in what they're doing is the course planner feature of Zello. And we've got a district in our county who's been piloting it, but we know other counties around us have districts in pretty wide use of course planner at this point. And it's basically a system that turns over course planning, four-year course planning and registration, turns those keys over to students, basically allows them to be the architects of their education from the very beginning in terms of seeing everything that's available to them, planning it in a way that makes sense to them, that gives them a vision of where they want to head for their high school years and that senior year, and doesn't put us in the position of kind of the bestower or the withholder of opportunities. It doesn't as a school counselor, doesn't put me in the position of being able to decide who and when and where I tell about opportunities. It puts that information out there for students to have access to and to feel like the designers of their future. When I used it with students in other counties, it was really powerful, both for students and for families. All right. And then again, sort of sticking with this Ella theme, but focusing specifically on elementary, and I'm going to post a link to this. We have a career champion in our county from Climax Scots who is working with her elementary students using Career Town, which is that elementary version, that K2 version, especially of Zello, doing some career exploration. It's very kind of gamification oriented, which the kids really love. But her discovery is that they needed something more. They wanted to extend it. And so she built a hyperdoc style lesson that allows students to kind of further explore the area of Career Town or the areas that they're most interested in. And what I think is really cool about this, even with our youngest students, is she built in a way for them to document their feelings, their likes and dislikes about the jobs they were exploring. And so I think sometimes at this early level, we kind of try to play it like everything is something that they'll love. And I think it's great from a very early age to allow them to have likes and dislikes and to start recognizing that those preferences are valuable, and that they can listen to themselves in terms of what things are most exciting or interesting to them. So we really wanted to lift up her work. Allison Charles in Climax Scots, who is the STEAM teacher at the elementary school there.
Great. So we're going to hop to middle school and just talk about a couple quick examples of ways that youth voice and choice are being incorporated in some of the work that's being done around the county. You heard Ethan show you the snapshot photo voice activity in the toolkit. And I think that this vision board assignment that is built in to some middle school curriculum for the computer apps class in Kalamazoo Public Schools has a lot in common with that. The idea being that a student gets to determine the value that is important to them and then create a vision board with graphics and quotations and definitions that speak to them about the value that they are lifting up in this assignment.
And then Idea Slam is an experience in our innovation lane of activities. And this activity, this curriculum, our colleague Lori Batesy has developed that helps students approach innovation, approach entrepreneurship from a very sort of self-led, self-directed perspective. And so it has students start off by figuring out what problem they want to solve in the world. And so Lori kind of designed this with the understanding that a lot of design thinking activities start with defining the problem and giving it to students to solve. And instead, this activity, this experience allows students to start with deciding what they want to solve, what's going on in their world that's a problem that they want to tackle, and then design a solution to that problem. And the other piece that I think is really great about this experience is it also asks students to reflect on their own interests and skills and how those will inform their role in solving the problem. And so not only are they defining the problem and designing the solution, they're also defining their role within that solution and sort of tailoring it to the things that they do best and that they most enjoy. And the ultimate goal of that is the Innovation Expo that happens at Western. So there's a great student-led showcase that allows them to then promote their work and share that with the rest of the world.
Great. Let's see if when I click, we hear the video. I'm going to click. Oh, yeah.
So this is what I want to talk
And moving on to high school, we wanted to just lift up a couple examples of student voice and choice happening already in our district. And one of the strategies in the Student Voice Toolkit that you might have a chance to take a look at is called Designing Places and Spaces. And so the two photographs on the right in this slide are showing exactly that, a group of current high schoolers actually giving input into the design of the spaces in the new Career Connect Center that we broke ground on there on the left this fall. You can also see that there are a number of students actually putting shovel to dirt there. So one of the deep commitments of our whole Career Connect group is to ensure that we listen to, lift up, partner with the young people who will be in that building when it opens in a couple of years. So what you can see here is students being offered the opportunity the same way that adults were offered to voice their preferences and to offer suggestions about how the spaces will be built, about what kinds of art will be available, about how they'll be able to use different elements of the space at different times of the day. And I think that we'll all benefit over the next couple of years as students continue to be involved in the development of the Career Connect Center. And we are aiming for, Ethan showed you that Youth Advisory Council down in the bottom right, the highest level of engagement and participation. We're aiming for a Youth Advisory Council that will also be part of this work.
And then I think maybe finally for this section, we're going to talk about reality fairs, which our colleague Dawn Pinkham is heavily involved and invested in offering this experience to students in our county. And this allows high school students to envision their future financially based on a career choice. And so they select a career, are kind of given a sort of labor-based salary amount, and then from there are involved in an experience where they design their life given knowledge of that salary and where it can go. And so they visit a bunch of different stations focused on transportation options and selecting whether you're gonna purchase a new car, buy a used car, take the bus, get a ride with a friend. They're visiting a housing station where they're deciding, are they gonna have a roommate? Are they gonna live on their own? Are they gonna stay at home? All kinds of different life-based options that they're choosing to kind of give them a sense of the choices that we all wind up making in life, but to put them in the driver's seat of figuring out what things are most important to them. And then one of the cool things about being at these events is kind of watching them walk through and revisit choices that they're making based on how it impacts the other choices that they've had to make. So it's been really fun being at a couple of these and watching the learning that happens as students have to kind of delve down into what's most important for them and then adjust all of their other choices as a result, and just seeing the confidence that that kind of experience builds in the students that have taken part in it.
Great, and that confidence piece links back to the very beginning, that theory where that's what we see, right? The more youth are partners and their voices are heard and respected and integrated, and they're getting to make choices, the more confidently they will approach their futures. And that just feels like a super core piece of all of our work in career awareness and exploration. So we've talked a lot. You all have been super patient and hopefully learned some things along the way. And now we'd really love to hear from you. What examples of youth voice and choice exist already in the work that you're doing? Or where would you like to take something that you heard today or something that you're thinking about now to incorporate into your students' career exploration? So feel free to jump in by chat or by just unmute and share with us. I'm going to give you another minute to look at the questions, and then I'm actually going to take this down so that we can see each other while you share with us. What do you got?
I have just a simple one just for the sake of, this is the Christmas week and things are crazy. So we have, this doesn't have anything to do with curriculum, so I'm just throwing it out there. But one of the things we talked about was we are going to have like the crafts, and we're going to have like a movie like afternoon with popcorn and stuff on now Thursday because of the Friday potential. Anyway, so each one of the teachers, and there are 4 of us, this is 5th grade, we each have a movie. And so the kids get to decide which classroom they're going to go to based on which movie. So we chose the movies, you know, because we had to make sure. But so it's funny because then some kids love that and they're like, well, I really want to watch that, but I want to be with my friend. So they go to that movie. And so then wherever they go, they have to stick and stay. But that was kind of nice. It was something new that we decided to do in 5th grade. And so the kids were like, whoa, we get to choose which classroom? Well, which movie are you having, Mrs. Portell? And I said, I'm not telling you that part. You have to choose it based on the movie. So that was just kind of funny, you know, just kind of drove some conversations that were kind of great. And so we've kind of done that one. I'll think about something curriculum wise, but that's where I'm starting.
What a great place to start.
Just on the heels of that, I do some work in parchment schools, and I see several schools integrating community circles within the classroom structure as a way to lift up student voice, not only about kind of the schedule for the day and things that are coming up, but also getting to build relationships with students and solve problems with students. And again, it's, as Jennifer said, it's not necessarily a career-based or curriculum-based process, but I think it sets the groundwork for allowing students to have regular input, which is really great to see.
I can share Erin's comment in the chat. The Career Now program is looking more into youth and young adult voice and choice and other types of trainings they're interested in. We're also looking at how to gather more productive feedback from participants. So if folks are aware, the Career Now program is a KRESA opportunity for young people to do short-term training and apprenticeships. And it's very exciting to hear that there might be options for young people to actually start to elicit some of the next iteration of trainings. It's a really wonderful group of folks doing that work. Thanks, Erin.
One of the things that, so my 5th grade team, I teach social studies and ELA and writing along with another teammate of mine. And then the other 2 teach science and math. And with the math thing, we have, varying degrees, and we did not, there's always debate about whatever in education and the pendulum and all that jazz. So take it with a grain of salt, what I'm saying, just for the sake of time. They did not do extreme ability grouping. However, they took kids by what their scores are, their, I don't know how much they're engaged in math and such. And so they did a medium high group and then a medium low group, and they split them up between the 2. And so instead of traveling as a cohort, they tried to do it based on how far they could push some kids and where kids were at for the math piece. So I say that because it would be interesting, because when I was in 1st grade, I did lots of conversation about, well, where do you think you are? And make them tell me, what do you think you can handle? What, I even did that with like spelling lists. We had a high spelling list with 14 words and then 12 words and then 10 words. And each week the kids were able to decide which list they thought they could tackle. Now they understood that the high one, the long one, will give you a 4 for sure. The one that was middle is only going to give you a 3 on a scale of 1 to 4. And the lowest one is going to give you a 2 just because of the amount of words. So they had to take that into consideration on which one, whether they wanted to have a 4. And so there would be some, they were very strategic. They're like, I don't know, those 2 challenge words are kind of tough. I might want to stick, and so they did this to, and I said, hey, that's on you, whichever one you decide to do. Because anyway, so it was kind of, I'm wondering about the same sort of thing, maybe a conversation to be had, although not yet, because that was kind of a tough thing for the math teachers to separate out. And they're still kind of getting their feet wet with but back to maybe they have those conversations with the kids. So you've been in this for a while. How do you feel about that? Do you feel challenged? Do you feel like maybe this is too much, depending on which thing they're in? And so maybe they have a decision to make and help that decision for the teachers. So it's food for thought. So I appreciate that conversation.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Joan, I had to step away for a second for a phone call, but I may have missed talking about this, but one of the things that I think COVID did for me when I was in the classroom, when we had the shutdown, was it changed my approach to how students could master the standards. And so I found myself creating choice boards that, and for high school students, that I thought before may have been more for the lower grades. And so incorporating those choice boards where the students could pick how they wanted to approach the content and demonstrate to me that they've mastered it. And then once I started going, I kind of like fell in love with choice boards. Like everything was a choice board, hey, look over here, make a video, do a podcast, write a poem, whatever it may be. So I think it changed my approach to, how kids could demonstrate proficiency. And my building at that time was moving towards standards-based grading. Social studies department was the last of the content areas to do so. And I loved hearing the other departments talk about when students didn't show mastery or proficiency, allowing students, giving it back to the students, saying, how could you demonstrate that to me?
Oh no, come back, Dawn. Well, I hope that we'll get Dawn back in a moment while we wait for her to unfreeze.
One of the things I know Dawn was going to share, which I appreciated about standards-based grading, it's not just give a kid a D and move them along. It's, how much have you learned? And kind of like Jennifer, Jenny was sharing too, that kids had a little bit of voice of how much they could master and what they were trying to, understand. And so math would have these 10 standards, and then you would decide, here's where I need more focus, or this is what I would be working on. So it's just a different approach, as opposed to, I'll quote Ethan, spray and pray, right? Everybody, the masses are going to get the same amount of math, and you're going to get it, like it or not. And then let's hope that some of them actually get it. And then most of the others will just kind of prod them along like cattle. So it's just a different approach to where are you with your learning and how much do you understand? One other thing for Jenny, and if Dawn does come back, is Schoolcraft for a long time was doing more project-based learning. And so to Lori's example of what problem do you want to solve, sometimes the problems were selected for them, but Jenny, I don't know if you can speak to this, but like the potato farmer, right? Where they had to do, basically they had to do the marketing. They owned what crop was going to be planted next. And so it was just a great way to involve kids in the community.
Yeah, that was a really good one. What I'm hoping is that won't always be our one time, that we always go back and we say, remember that one time when we did that really great, I hope we get more potatoes, where we can say, hey, guess what? We did it again and we got another set of potatoes. And, I hope we do it more than that one time, because although, COVID, good Lord, I'm so tired of saying that word, but, moving on, hoping that we can get to the next time when we can get back to that project-based learning, that people trust the kids enough to take a chance and a risk on those sorts of things. It's just making sure that the teachers are comfortable to take that step. One of the things, if Dawn hadn't frozen, I would have asked her. So with that sort of thing, I wonder, there must have been, especially with high school, a rubric that no matter what you did, whether it was a podcast or a video or a poem, that you had to meet these particular rubrics. So I really like that choice on a choice board. That's a whole different ball game, And so anyway, good ideas. I love this. So yeah, thank you.
Good. I think we just got Dawn back on the call, so maybe she'll chime back in. In the meantime, I did want to lift up Kelly from Washtenaw, put something cool in the chat. I wanted to make sure people saw that too. She works with adult transitions with students with an IEP in Washtenaw County, and they have their students create an IEP slideshow with their own interests, goals, and future plans that then the student presents at the IEP meeting. And they use the IEP with that as a place to start from. So what a great example of a way to take this into a specific work plan. We have just a couple more minutes. If other folks have other examples they want to lift up. One other great one that Ethan was sharing with us and that we've heard from other teachers too is the idea of creating jobs in the classroom, actual job opportunities. So one teacher was hiring a human resources director who would be the student who would field the complaints on behalf of the class. And another teacher was hiring for landscape designers who would do a garden outside the school, or the lunchtime DJ who would put together a playlist. And while they were doing that, they learned about how you create an application and how you go through the hiring process, but then how you get the opportunity to actually steer a project in your classroom after you are hired to do it. So it's another exciting way to kind of connect it to careers. Any last thoughts from folks maybe who haven't had a chance to speak yet?
Hi. What I'm thinking about at my high school is a project we do where the students have to interview someone in a career they're interested in. And then they also have to choose 4 colleges to investigate that would go along with after they've done the interview and learned a little bit more about the career. So they're choosing their own, and then sometimes some of the classes they present it, the 9th grade class, they'll present that to other students, what they've learned about that career. And then we can repeat it with something else in 10th grade and 11th grade. So I do really like that project, but I'm trying to stretch my imagination with this session for, other things. I think that like how to shift that perspective a little of it being like an adult, like you can talk to an adult and you can get this information, and then someday you can be an adult and you can do these things, and like it's still very teacher guided, and I think so I'm just trying to think of ways that they could have a little more ownership in that. They say it's valuable. They get a lot out of it, but where they feel it's a little more like, okay, I'm building my, portfolio of information, or I'm like, maybe almost collect. I'm trying to think like maybe there's a way they collect these things. I don't know if it's through Zello or another way. I collect these pieces throughout the years so that I'm gathering this information, and I don't know, just that ownership piece and feeling like that's where I want to stretch my imagination for what we can do at my school.
I think about that idea, Rebecca, of an artifact box. I love what you're sharing, and that students are exploring careers and interviewing people in that career. And then maybe part of what they do is create an artifact box, right? Like with tools from that career, or articles or reports or something like that. So they have almost like a physical box with pieces from that career that other students can explore over time. I don't mean to get into problem solving. It's just such a cool idea that you're thinking of, and how they can take more ownership and have it be more of an ongoing project as opposed to
I think then they would be contributing to future students' knowledge. It wouldn't be that, like, here's what our community knows about this career, and here's what our community knows about people we can contact if we want to know more about it. They're kind of adding to, the school's knowledge for future students. I would like that. I like that idea. And then one more thing that popped in my head as you were talking about is I realized, as I was saying it, the interview is one way. You're getting all the information from the adult, but there could be ways to set it up where, you're going to have an adult in your life that is going to ask you some questions too about where you're at, and, your strengths or so there's some possible things there.
I see good things happening from that for sure. Great
Great conversation. I'm a tiny bit mindful that we are 5 minutes from wrapping up, and I'm guessing that perhaps there are other places people would like to be in a few minutes. So I'm gonna pull my screen back up and just give you a couple final chunks of information. In the slide deck that you have received, you will see that there are links to the resources that we have been talking about today. It's definitely worth going to the Chicago Public Schools guide, as well as the 2 toolkits that we lifted up today. And then we want to invite you to do an exit ticket traffic light that we borrowed from Ethan and Cara and Abby's presentation. And it is an opportunity for you to share with us on a shared Google Doc that Jocelyn has just put into the chat. One thing that you're taking away from today that you might stop doing in your work with young people, one thing that you're interested in exploring doing, and then one thing that you'll either continue or start doing. So a red light, a yellow light, and a green light. And there should be in that Google Doc a set of bullet points where you can just pick one of those or add a bullet point and add your red, yellow, and green lights as we wrap up today. And hopefully as you're in there, you can start to see some of the offerings that other people are making in terms of their traffic lights as they wind down today. With that, I wanted to make sure that we did make you aware that there is a fabulous comprehensive introduction to youth voice that will come to you from our co-presenters today, Ethan and Cara, a 2-part workshop that will go much deeper and give lots of opportunities to test out some of these options and dive deeper into the Student Voice Toolkit. The dates and times are listed here. I don't know if Ethan or Cara want to jump in and add anything to my sort of rudimentary explanation, but
I'll add just a brief piece. The second portion of this, so the first portion kind of does the overview and gives us time to practice some of the strategies. And in the second portion, we're still gathering these folks for this round, but we try to be intentional about gathering some students who are engaged in some student voice work in their schools or districts, and then also some adults that are coordinating some of that work so that you can hear not just from us, but folks that are actually making that work happen.
Thank you. I can highly recommend this workshop. So if you are interested in going deeper and learning more, if you're intrigued after the introduction that we've done today, this is a great opportunity, and you could register. If you go to KRESA.org, there is a tab at the top for professional learning, and that should get you there.
Thanks, Joan. Appreciate the promo.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, we appreciate you all. This has definitely been a team labor of love today. And this is our last slide. You can see, I think, that Jocelyn has posted the sketchy sign in, sign out form. Please don't forget to do that so we can make sure and get you your sketches for today. But we did also want to let you know that we next month will be talking about probably a great follow-up to this conversation, educational development plans. How can we take that state requirement and make it into something that is meaningful and useful for our students? So we'd really invite you to scan the QR code here or follow up with us, get to our website and register for our January 17th PD. It will also be virtual, and then we will go back to face in February. So with that, I want to say thank you so much to Ethan and Cara and Jocelyn for co-presenting today. And also to all of you who are here and engaged as it gets darker on the almost shortest day of the year. It's really wonderful to have had this time with you. So thanks very much. Have a wonderful holiday, pleasant evening, and we will hope to stay in touch into 2023. Take good care.
Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks to those of you who participated and brought your questions, your ideas. your family into the screen, your pets, your cousins. It's fantastic. It's really wonderful to be here with you. Thank you.
Glad